you check the children? Your little mad sometimes.
Hi, I'm Chucky. Wanna play?
Sometimes. That is better.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Horror Show. I'm Cecil Laird.
And you got Jaime and Fuego here.
And we are here to do a review of a brand new movie release. And I personally am very excited to discuss this. We're here to talk about Ti West's new feature, which is being released by A24, called X. Now, yeah, the first thing I want to say is this, while still an A24 movie, I think this is the one you could slide by the people that hate A24 movies and get away with it. You know what I mean? I'm just going to get right into it with my overall thoughts and say that I loved this film, and upon thinking about it more and more, because we watched it last night, and I'm very excited to discuss it because I've just, thinking back, I was like, oh, that was cool, that was cool, that was cool. There's just really a lot to really enjoy in this feature. How the movie was made and presented, how it was shot, how it was acted. You know, the only thing that some people might consider a weakness is the story, I guess, as far as what transpires. Some people might not buy into what transpires. But I definitely did, and I like this movie so much more. It's not that I didn't think I was going to like it, it's just I had zero expectations. I was just along for the ride, and it really kind of blew me away. It was fantastic. I loved X. What about you, Fuego?
Oh, dude, I'm right there with you. This movie was so goddamn entertaining, and I also went in with not the highest of expectations. Like, from the trailer, I was like, oh, a Texas Chainsaw kind of vibe meets, like, Zack and Miri. Okay, I'm kind of into that amalgamation and mushing together of stuff, but it didn't, at least from the trailer, give the indication about how deep it was going to go, especially in the back half, in the certain themes of aging and yeah, which really hit me in the feels a little bit, actually. And the performances were so funny, and yeah, it is a slow burn and it takes its time to get to the horror, but I was so entertained and amused by
I was bought in.
Yeah, and plus it was so gorgeous looking. Some of the like Ti West, dude. I mean, I know some people have, like, he's kind of a hit and miss, and like I know you didn't like the Sacrament, the Jim Jones one that he did, but then the House of the Devil, that seems more across the board. A lot of people really respect that one, but and this just premiered at South by Southwest, and I guess he also did a secret prequel called Pearl,
yes,
which they just announced, which is cool. So
I was very excited to hear that. I was like, that's dope, dude. That's really cool.
Yeah, but this is not one that I could even try to rip on and pick apart as I have some things recently. I just had so much fun with this flick.
Awesome. Well, let's dive into it, shall we? Guys, we're going to keep this non-spoilery. We don't want to ruin anything because this movie is just really entertaining to go into kind of blank. So I'm going to say the plot is about a group of young folks that are trying to make a name for themselves by making the first high quality cinema porn. And like they're
of a higher art.
Yeah, exactly. The actual
the
filmmaker behind it is the one that wants to do this elevated pornography, because no one can deny the draw of porn and its attention, but they want to elevate it so that it's more consumable by regular audiences rather than just perverts.
Yeah, and it's 1979, so it's like post Debbie Does Dallas, and where this stuff was starting to get to more acceptability to a slight
right when
degree,
home video was just starting to come around as well. So all of that plays into it, and it's so well done. Again, I guess this is technically considered a period piece, but I loved this. I loved the setup. It's the horror movies that I grew up on were set in this era, so this doesn't even feel like a period piece to me, but straight up, it's over 30 years ago, so it is. But yeah, this group, they're on the road and they've taken up lodging at a, for the youngins of the audience, this is a sort of pre-Airbnb situation where they just contacted someone who had an open little guest house, and they are boarding themselves at this guest house, so staying there for just a night or two in order to shoot their movie on this farm location, because that's the movie is called The Farmer's Daughters. So that is the purpose. And when they get there, the guy that's sort of Matthew McConaughey light, I'll call him.
Very much the executive producer on the film, as he constantly calls himself, and also the one providing the women and the talent, so to speak, for it, right?
Yeah, I'm guessing he was also the director as well. He's just not the cameraman. So he is there, and he goes and talks to the old man that it's his property that they're renting from. And the old man's just like, do what you're gonna do, but be discreet about it, because, my wife is sick and she's up at the house. And so the crew starts to do their thing. They start to film themselves. And by the way, there is a lot of nudity in this movie. There's not any full frontal male nudity, but there is.
Well, a little bit in the shadows and dong action.
And it was really more dude butts than anything else. And then and then chesticles for the ladies. So but yeah, so there's a lot of that going on. And then the main girl, played by Mia Goth, she starts to kind of explore the property, and she ends up meeting up with the wife at one point, and you get a sort of sense as to the home life of the older couple. And then from there, I'm going to leave it as is. I don't want to spoil anything that happens from there, but things start to get crazy. And I won't say why or how, because I didn't know going in why or how, but they did a tremendous job with it. It is sort of akin to an M. Night Shyamalan film that we've seen in the past, but you'll get that as you watch it. So, see, even if Fuego doesn't know what my reference is, so it's good. I'm not giving anything away there. But, but nonetheless, that is the crux of the story, and I just gave myself over to it. I was engaged with this group of people, not because they were making a porn and I'm lascivious or anything like that, but because the characters were well drawn. All the characters had an obvious agenda. We saw what everyone's desires were at the very beginning of the film and how it all developed through the progression of the movie. It does do a trope, though. I will say the film does a trope that you either buy into or you don't, where you see the aftermath at the very beginning of the movie and then they flash back.
It was one of my, that structuring was one of my only complaints if I was really gonna get into it. So I'm right there with you on that one too, man.
But ultimately the way that it played out didn't bother me. The only reason it bothers me is when they do that, you take notes of things that you're seeing, and so you're like, well, something has to end up here, something has to end up here, just geographically within the set. And when things are happening, but nothing's happening in these locations, I'm like, okay, well, that's yet to come. So you're like anticipating things where you otherwise might not be. That's the only issue I take with it.
Yeah. And that's really the only thing I can think of too, man, is the fact that you are just trying to anticipate, okay, well, we know some people are going to die. And so when they show that in the very first few frames, and you're like, okay, but it really, for me, the biggest standout was the fleshing out of the characters, as you mentioned, and most notably their banter and the dialogue amongst all of them. I thought it was very clever, very funny,
very realistic.
And everybody, they all felt completely believable, and there was no one-dimensionality, really. Even the older couple, and the whole angle with them, and how far into their age and their marriage and stuff that they are. Still the twist that I was not expecting at all in this movie. Also, Mia Goth's character, her aspirations. I mean, to the church mouse character played by the girl from the most latest Scream film, and then Brittany Snow from the Prom Night remake, who was just like hoeing it up and loving it and just being ridiculous, and even the Vietnam background with our stud in the film. Like everybody had a cool, very well developed angle that I appreciated.
It felt like there was a character for almost every segment of the audience to identify with in some way, shape, or form, and that means that's really, again, like I said, really well drawn characters. So yeah, I agree with you entirely. And story wise, how everything played out, were you as pleased with that as I was?
The third act, where it kind of really ramps up the horror, I I enjoyed it quite a bit, but it's not like there was something. There is a decent amount of foreshadowing, and there are a few payoffs though that I was very happy. Most notably with a aquatic creature, which I thought was great. And then there's also some surprises about characters that get it, and like with one shotgun blast in particular, I was like, wow.
That was,
props
I knew
on
that was going to happen too. I knew it. I knew it was coming, and I was still like, oh. But the one kill I will say, now everyone else that's watched this is, it's like 4 years separated from it, but there was one kill that was basically the exact same kill from a segment of American Horror Story 1984, the holes sort of thing. But outside of that, everything was very well done, and it caught me off guard. And so I was pleased as punch with the story. Acting wise too, everyone was so in the zone. It felt like a 1979 movie, and the actors played so well with what they were given. Everyone really took their segment of the movie and really just enriched it as much as they could. I was keyed into everyone's performance. Like, it's not necessarily that I cared about each and every person, but I was keyed into each and every person.
Yeah, I found them all fascinatingly flawed to a degree. And there's a bit like around it's in the second act, but there is a character arc where there's a turn that somebody has and something they want to do, and the reaction of another character. I know we're dancing around and not trying to spoil or anything. That whole scene, everybody in the theater, I felt, was just like, oh, wow, because you'd seen the cross around the neck and all this different stuff, and so that like,
honestly,
like
that made me identify so much more with a different character. Because I was like, I'd be pissed too. Like,
I was right there with that person as well, without spoiling. And that person looked like a character from the Evil Dead remake, with the glasses and everything that sure. I could not get past. But I still dug it, and I mean the McConaughey stand-in was super funny, and to where he's just like standing around in his whitey tighties with like just the dong hanging and talking.
Yeah,
I don't know, just everybody was totally just dialed in to the era and the twang, because I know Mia Goth is Euro, so
really?
She was really she was rocking the accent.
She was
very effectively
so
too.
Like that. My God, I don't remember seeing her in a bunch before. I know you said she's been in a few things, but
Cure for Wellness is the one that I remember specifically.
I was enraptured with her performance. She was like, first off, I now realize that one of the sexiest things I've ever seen is just a girl in nothing but shorty overalls. Like, completely full overalls and nothing else. That is a sexy look.
I agree.
But not only that, but she was kind of a powerhouse little performance in this movie. Like, she had the range and she had the ambition, but she also had the vulnerability and the aggressiveness. Like, man, she really impressed the hell out of me, honestly. So I definitely dug her specifically.
Yeah, and I know Jenna Ortega is like getting a lot of just attention because she was like a powerhouse in the most recent Scream movie, but that's why I was so much surprised by Mia Goth, and like her first scene where she's staring in the mirror and what she says like just gets you, boom, you're locked in. I'm a sex icon or what, verbatim, trying to remember it exactly, but the fact that
I will
she's
not accept a life I do not deserve. Like, I fucking love that.
And she was a very flawed character, but yet still one that you would root for, and very strong and very believable and multifaceted, And even Brittany Snow was
she was
cracking
so
me
enjoyable.
Up.
The Marilyn Monroe wannabe, right? Clearly, that's what she was going for, is the look. But yeah,
and some of her dialogue after the first scene with Dude was so funny. Bless your heart, and I just laughed.
Yeah, I like that dude's line. Has one line too at one point where he's just like, I don't mind. Like, it was so good.
Yeah, everybody nailed it, man. No pun intended.
For real? One of them specifically definitely nailed it.
Yeah.
And it. But
I know what you're referring to. Great.
Let's get on to the filmmaking, because I definitely want to talk about the filmmaking. I want to talk about the music, and definitely want to talk about the effects. The filmmaking really kind of blew me away. The shots were gorgeous, and I think the filmmaking is what kind of slots it in with the A24 oeuvre, so to speak, right? The sort of
Avant-garde.
the slow paced, it gives everything room to breathe and stuff like that. Granted, we say slow paced, but it's an hour and 40-minute movie, so it moves, but it gives itself room to breathe where necessary. That's talent, by the way, by itself. But he tries some different things where so the movie is kind of, you see the old couple situation, and then you see the character situation, and sometimes he'll straight pull like he does a wipe early on where it's like, oh wow, we're going back to screen wipes, which is very 70s and early 80s. You know, Star Wars had wipes and stuff like that.
And
So
it was like all George Lucas would do in those
yeah,
movies.
exactly. But there's times where he literally does a wipe and then he just splits the screen, and you see the different people in a split screen situation, and it, like, you're drawn in, and it raises the tension at different points and stuff like that. So I felt that was very experimental as far as the typical horror movie goes, and it played really well to me. It played definitely more artistic, but it played as unique, right? We've seen slashers and stuff in the past where there's just people out in a remote farm area getting killed. That's not what this is, and that's not what it presents itself as. I loved the filmmaking in this movie.
Yeah, and some of those transitions, like not even necessarily the wipe like you were saying, but where it would have relevance for one character, what was happening, and then it would immediately segue, sometimes in the same scene, into how it could similarly pertain to another character. Most notably in some of the like segments where there was music accompaniment and just characters going through recollection and things of that nature. And some of those stationary shots where there's like no movement of any kind, especially one like super high up on, it's obviously a drone, I'm guessing, where a character is swimming around, and it was gorgeous, man. I mean, there was
filled
big time. And that's one of the other ways that you can just up the anticipation or the edge of your seat stuff and the tension, like you were saying, man. So Ty West, like, I appreciated him before, but like this really solidified him as somebody who anything he makes going forward, whoever he's, because I know he wrote, produced, and directed this. I don't know who his DP was, but it was gorgeous looking, and it also helped to separate this even from just a visual standpoint from other stuff we've previously seen.
Yeah, for sure. There was another point I wanted to make too, but it slipped. It's just there's so much good to talk about with this film, and
yeah.
So I guess let's get into the music, and maybe it'll occur to me. So this had one of the most haunting scores that was mixed with some of the best late 70s sort of music and again, the filmmaking here is fantastic because there's usually a clear separation between the two, right? If characters are listening to a song on the radio, they're listening to the song on the radio, and then the car pulls into wherever and it turns off and that music stops, and then boom, we're into the score. This movie actually layers the score underneath the radio at times and other music going on, so there's like multiple layers to it, and it gets you confused, and like you're like enjoying the music on the radio with the characters, but you get this ominous creeping sense over you as well. There was so much, as an aspiring filmmaker myself, there's so much to take away from this as a unique way to approach horror. I just can't speak highly enough for it. It's fucking crazy. Easily my favorite horror movie of the year so far.
It's right there with Fresh for me. Absolutely.
I like it better than Fresh. But
I do like it better than Fresh, but that's much more, well, I was about to say much more on the comedic side of things, but I don't even know if that's fair. There's like a lighter
some funny stuff in this movie.
I guess there's some hilarious stuff in this movie, man. Yeah, damn right. But yeah, there's lots of recognizable tunes. You've got some BOC, you've got some CV Nicks and other stuff. But when it segues into that layering that you were mentioning, especially with just like a female voice, like just melodically, just kind of not so much a humming, but
a
just
choral aspect. It's like,
very much
yeah,
so. It's
love
creepy,
that.
and yeah.
Ever since the first example I can really remember latching onto was in Scream 2 when Sydney escapes the theater attack into the room by herself, this little isolated room with black curtains around her. The score there gets very choral. And what I mean by, for those that don't understand what I'm saying, not like the stuff in the ocean, but like chorus, chorus focused, but it's usually just one voice, one haunting female voice in a very choral sense. And I love that stuff anyway, but I absolutely loved that for this.
Yeah, and it's not even like singing lyrics, or actual words really. It's more so just that,
like stuff like that. It's so fucking cool.
Yeah, and as the film is transitioning to the higher stakes we get later on, that's where it was just so effectively used, man. Yeah, it was great.
Now let's get into the gore of it, because Ty West has never shied away from gore where necessary, and this absolutely has it where where it belongs. Like, it's not sprinkled throughout the movie. It has its place, and it doesn't shy away, and it is actually surprising at times how crazy it gets when we actually get it. And I don't want to spoil anything, but there is some graphic death. And what I actually loved is that, so normally movies will have sort of a first image and a mirrored second image, or ending image rather. This one had the first close-up of gore kind of early in the movie, and then a very mirrored version of that gore towards the end. And I was like, that's good fucking filmmaking. Like, that is so good.
I'm right there with you, dude. And I also appreciated the fact that when we got some of the gore, it did actually linger on it. Like, it was not a character just being quickly killed, although I guess that did happen a couple times, but there were other instances where it just kept going, and we would pull back a little bit, or we would get more of a close-up, or he changed the lighting around a little bit, especially as the death was becoming much more apparent.
Or the lighting was changed as a result of the death.
Yeah. Yeah, we're thinking of the same one then. The one thing I wanted to ask you, so both of these actors were obviously not elderly people who were playing this couple, and I felt like it was kind of a Mother Abigail look where,
they were not, right?
They weren't old actors. They had like prosthetic and
didn't
kind of
one
stuff
of the other I guess I don't want to spoil it, but I believe one of the other actors played one of those characters.
Really? Now that gives me further consideration. I'm probably actually going to use my A-list to see this again this weekend.
When I saw the story about Pearl, I believe it said that
because of who's coming back for the movie.
Right.
Wow.
Is playing both characters.
That makes me respect that particular person so much more.
If that was actually that, then yeah.
The
right.
Yeah.
So I want to check that out myself. Again, we're dancing around it because we don't want to spoil it for you guys. It's so worth seeing. So I don't know. Any final thoughts on it, Fuego? I've gushed the hell. I haven't gushed about a movie like this in a long time.
I have too. Yeah, I've been drinking the haterade lately in a lot of people's estimations, and so for me, just being very stoked about this one, and I'll often mention the burden of expectation. So I can't recommend it enough. Seriously. So
for sure. So. All right, guys. Well, thank you very much for watching. Thank you to all of our patrons for supporting the channel the way that you do. We greatly, greatly appreciate it. Until next time, though, I've been Cecil Laird.
And gracias, I've been Jaime and Fuego.
Make sure you go and watch X. But until then, guys, remember, stay scared.
Stay scared.